Welcome back to another episode of the Water Matters podcast. I'm very pleased to be joined once again by Tim Smedley, author of this book, which I'll just hold up to the camera if you're watching on YouTube, The Last Drop. Hopefully this isn't the first time that you are listening to the Water Matters podcast, and hopefully my reference to Tim and Tim's book is a familiar one by now. Tim, how are you? All good?
Yeah, really good, Matt. Good to be back after a fairly long summer.
Yes, indeed. We've had a little break whilst we've been working on lots of things in the background, but it has been a bit of a summer break, a very dry summer, which again we'll come on to as well. But it is good to be back talking all things Water Matters. One thing that we have been working on, it would be remiss of me not to mention because it's recently been launched on the website. If you have visited watermatters.life, hopefully you will have seen, if it's not there yet, it will be very soon, a link to subscribe and download our 2025 Water Matters Yearbook. This is a new publication that we are releasing annually. In the future, every year, 2026 onwards, it will be released on the 22nd of March, which is, of course, World Water Day. The 2025 idea and inspiration came a little later than World Water Day 2025. So we've put the first one out just because there's been so much going on in the West, particularly in the UK, but around the world really, in the world of sustainable water management. And so we wanted to start this yearbook, get it out there. Tim has very kindly written a very good foreword for us for the book, which is brilliant, and identifies just in that introduction kind of some of the reasons that we wanted to create this publication that is going to come out every year, because it's easy to sort of get lost in the amount of things that are going on. So we felt like an annual publication that documents what has happened in different regions of the world in relation to water would be really helpful, especially when you can sort of look back from one year to the previous and all that sort of stuff and see what has changed. And so that is out there. Hopefully you've seen it. If you have not subscribed and downloaded that, please do so. We're also still sending the fortnightly emails that go out every Water Wednesdays, every other Wednesday. So go to watermatters.life if you have not already and put your email in, and you'll receive lots of Water Matters into your inbox. And talking about the website, one article that has recently been posted on there by you, Tim, is titled, "Was It Like the Summer of 76 for You?" That is going to be a reference point for this episode of the podcast. But before we get into that, let's talk about the summer a little bit. Let's talk about 2025, the fact that we are sat here recording this in nearly mid-September. Is crazy how quickly it's gone, but it's been an interesting year weather-wise, hasn't it, Tim?
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, when I came in last time, we were talking about no mow May, this idea of not mowing your lawn during May, and that it might be a good way to keep your lawn drought resistant. It's lucky I did,
yes,
because it has been incredibly dry. Yeah. I think the numbers are still being crunched on just how dry the summer is compared to previous ones. But the spring was the driest ever recorded, going back to 1882, I believe. I think the summer is pretty close to being the driest ever too. Yeah, really quite incredible. It's the sunniest ever as well, just the amount of days of sunshine. So it's hard to say, oh, it was terrible. I mean, in many ways, it was quite a pleasant summer.
Yes.
But it was terrible in terms of rainfall. It was terrible in terms of drought. We're talking in our area of Oxfordshire here in Banbury. We are part of the hosepipe ban region. So I believe there's 8 million households still in under hosepipe ban restrictions. We are amongst them. England is officially in drought. This is an official government term. We are in drought. The hosepipe ban restriction is interesting. So I got part of my instigation for writing this blog. I got an email from Thames Water on Monday kind of saying, thank you for helping us save 5 million litres of water by putting away your hosepipe. So that's kind of what they've calculated you save by hosepipe ban. Sounds like a lot of 5 million litres. It's not really. That's a mere drop in the reservoir ocean, but it's still useful. A hosepipe ban, I mean, it might be another topic for another day, but it's interesting that's still almost what we see as the gold standard for water saving.
Yes.
Banning the use of hosepipes.
Yeah.
It's useful, but it's tinkering around the edges, really. So that's another thing for another day. But then they also included an interesting graph that I hadn't come across. So they said that we will need at least 70% more than our average rainfall between now and early next year for reservoir levels to return to normal. That's interesting in itself because it shows just how reliant we are on winter rainfall. Mm-hmm. So we need a very wet winter.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind when we're trudging around in mud in early December or whenever the rains will arrive.
Yeah.
Because we need it.
And people, I'm sure, and I think it's already happened a little bit, people will immediately forget the dry summer that we just had. You know, like as soon as you have 2 or 3 days of rain in a row, you suddenly think, it just rains all the time, doesn't it?
Completely.
And actually, we've had such a long period. I spent the summer training, well, certainly the last 3 months, I'm doing this stupid triathlon half Ironman this Sunday, actually, which my brother and I agreed to do earlier on in the year. And I've spent a lot of time either swimming, running, or on the bike. And it was only just last week that I realised was my first time out on the bike when it actually rained. Like, I've been doing something every day outside for the last 3 to 4 months, and my one sort of this bike ride last week was the first time I'd been rained on, which is just crazy when you think that just doesn't happen in the UK, does it? It's not supposed to. It's bonkers, really. So I've certainly noticed it, and I think that I'm sure other people have as well, but people will forget very quickly because we just do, don't we? So
definitely. But it is interesting, and one thing I didn't appreciate until writing this book is that we do have a rainy season in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason why we see ourselves as a rainy country is it is capable of raining any given week or month. So it is possible to have a rainy August, we'll all remember them. But we do have the vast majority of rainfall in winter, and our water systems, our reservoirs, are highly reliant on a wet winter. And we'll get onto that a little bit with 76, because interestingly 76 had a dry winter. Mm-hmm. That's partly why they had the drought they had. It's less about the heat wave, more about having a dry winter.
Right.
We need the winter rainfall, but we're becoming increasingly reliant on it because we're having drier and drier summers. So we absolutely need to have a wet winter now. And as Thames Water is saying, they need a wetter winter than normal this year. So there's a lot riding on that, which is quite something. And then in the Thames Water email, they give this graph of but month by month of this year, just in their region. But it spells out what you're saying, Matt, in terms of, so going back to September 24, they had we had 130 millimetres more than usual of rainfall. Then October, 5 millimetres more, 40 millimetres more, November. So we had a wet autumn last year. Then when we fast forward to March this year, that's kind of when it started, really. I mean, March was incredible. March was 46 millimetres less rainfall than a usual March. You typically expect that to then be followed by a rainy April, because we're seeing this yo-yoing between rainy periods and dry periods, but that yo-yoing is becoming more seasonal. April was then 29 millimetres less. May was 32 millimetres less. June was 20 millimetres less. July was 9 millimetres less. This graph ends in July, but we've just had August. We also know that August was several millimetres less. Don't have the full figures yet. But so from March onwards, we've had effectively drought. So drought's not officially announced until several weeks in. Yeah. But looking back now, we can say from March onwards we've been in drought, which is incredible.
Yeah. No, it is. It's just and of course, been incredibly warm with that as well. I think it's probably the summer that most people hope for, really, from a sort of enjoying the outdoors and that sort of stuff. It's what we want, isn't it, really?
It's what we want. We want the sun, and we didn't have the extreme heat of, say, 22. So 2022 was our hottest summer ever, and ever in terms of as far back as we believe humans have been on this island ever. But that's when we hit 40 degrees. That will probably happen again, but it's the first time it's ever happened. This year, the highest we hit was 35.8 degrees, hot.
Yeah.
But not as hot as 40.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had a long sunny summer. It is kind of what you want, but it was noticeably dry in terms of, you did have to water your garden if you wanted it to live, not with a hose pipe if you live in our area. Farmers had a really tough time of it. I mean, I think we probably should have a farming special episode coming up. I visited a farm in July. I forget the exact date, but they were getting close to harvest. They said the harvest was a month earlier.
Wow.
Because the crops were golden, the wheat was ready, it was small, and the grains were pretty shriveled, but that was their only chance to harvest. So harvests have come a lot earlier with much reduced yields. That's a big concern. And just general back garden gardeners will have noticed a difference in their garden. Lawns are dry and brown. So river flows much reduced. So the outdoor element of it, although it was nice to be outdoors, it was also noticeable the negative impacts of it. And we're speaking in mid-September, so autumn is now happening. But autumn was starting in August this year. So it was called a false autumn because leaves were falling and fruits were coming out and the nuts on the trees were coming out much earlier than usual, because they had to do it to release the stress happens to trees, especially through reduced water in the soil. So it's definitely noticeable what happens.
And all over as well. I think we certainly noticed in our business. Yorkshire was the first. Yorkshire Water, I think, was the first water authority that implemented the hosepipe ban, and that just wouldn't be something you would expect.
Unheard of for Yorkshire Water to move forward. Yorkshire Water have the most water reserves per head, per capita of any water region. Amazing that it was Yorkshire Water that was bringing us water.
And we we have some new customers in Yorkshire now. One lady in particular who we got to talk to and actually record the video of her why she decided to buy a water butt and start kind of using whatever rainwater she could rather than mains water. She's got a beautiful, very well established garden, but she lives very close to one of the reservoirs up there, and so we have some footage that again we'll probably show on a future episode. She explains where the water level used to sort of, or typically comes up to, and then just you look at this video and there's just no water in there at all. It's crazy the difference in what she said is very sort of normal even during the summer, and then what they've been faced with this year. So it's been it's not just a southeast problem, as we've probably talked about a little bit before. It really has been all across the country, hasn't it?
It really has. I don't think a single water company has ridden through this unscathed. No.
So it's interesting times, and it's and of course since we last spoke as well, since the last episode that we did together, there was the Water Reform Act, or the publication of all these changes in relation to sort of water in the UK and the role of Ofwat and all that sort of stuff. It's all lots of interesting things happening in there as well.
The demise of Ofwat. Ofwat will be no more. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how our water system works from that point on. I mean, a lot of it's still a bit up in the air.
Lots of change, yes. And I think, I suppose, positive from what we've always talked about on this podcast is the subject of water is being discussed. It is more, it's more talked about. It's more in the news. I think it probably is more in people's households as well, just in general, because it has become just a much more important topic that everyone is thinking about or sort of can relate to somehow, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. The one good thing to say about hosepipe bans is it does get people talking about water and suddenly more aware of it. I actually noticed there was a few kind of misunderstandings about hosepipe bans. I anecdotally heard of one neighbour telling off their other neighbour for filling up a watering can from the hose.
Right.
As if just the overall use of the hosepipe was completely unallowed. Also, disabled people were always allowed to use hose pipes throughout the hosepipe ban. So it's worth knowing. Yes, if you're wheelchair bound, you can use a hosepipe in a hosepipe ban.
Yeah.
So it's more just a general: don't water your garden with a hosepipe. Don't fill a swimming pool. Don't fill a paddling pool. Yeah. But it's not just a full on. You can't touch your hosepipe.
No.
But yeah, it does get people talking about it for sure. I also noticed again anecdotally. I haven't looked into this enough to know if it's a growing trend or not. I heard of quite a few areas having, fully water cut off for a day or two. It happened in Chipping Camden in the Cotswolds near here. Actually happened yesterday in my daughter's school. The school was closed for half a day because the water was cut off.
Right.
Probably just coincidental things, but I don't know. There does seem to be part of a trend, at least, of people noticing, actually, water supply isn't so reliable that it's just going to happen whenever we turn the taps on. I think people are starting to realise there are many moving parts to this, and some of those moving parts are very fallible companies. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that reminds me, it does relate to some of the stuff that you've written about in this article. I listened to another podcast just this morning, in fact, which I'm very happy to share with our listeners. I'm sure some people would be familiar with it anyway, but Positive Planet have just released an episode on all about a new reservoir that's being built in the Portsmouth water area, and it's the first new reservoir for a long time, and so it's a very interesting episode, and particularly talks about why new reservoirs are required and why there is a plan for a further 10 or so, I think, over the next many years, and really just the scale of it and the length of time it takes, the fact that actually this, even though it's being built and created in Portsmouth water area, it's actually going to be used for southern water customers, because Portsmouth water don't have a shortage of water for their customers, but southern water very much do, and it goes into some specific numbers about just how just how sort of short the water supply is for southern water customers, and how actually if they don't do something about it, then there will be too little water for them to supply to their customers. So yes, it's an interesting episode that anyone interested in this podcast, I'm sure, would enjoy listening to as well. But you do refer to a few reservoirs and things within this article, but let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about why are we referring on the watermatters.life website to the summer of 1976. I'm sure people will have some knowledge of this, but let's give them some further information.
Yeah, well, the summer of 76 always comes up when you're talking about long hot summers and droughts, and there have been a few articles over summer comparing 76 to 25 and which was better, which was worse. Interestingly, even those kind of loaded terms are interesting. Better meaning longer and hotter, or worse also meaning longer and hotter.
Yes.
Yes. We do need to reevaluate how we think of heat potentially.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I thought I'd look into this too. And so there are lots of interesting similarities, but also contrast between the summer of 76 and 2025. 76 is also, I think, nostalgic for other reasons in terms of it was a famous Wimbledon. Bjorn Borg won his first Wimbledon. Also Wimbledon, the courts are basically brown. This was during the heat wave that Wimbledon happened. Anyway, to sum up 76 a little bit, there's quite a funny article in the Times by Stuart Heritage written this summer, titled, "Was 1976 really such a great summer, or is 2025 better?" And he wrote, if, like me, you happen to have been born after 1976, there's a very good chance that you will have noticed a worrying yet growing trend. People who were alive in 1976 wanging on about 1976 like their lives depend on it. As soon as you want to see it, you'll start to see it everywhere. Whenever there's a heat wave, or British people do well at tennis. And I think he's right. You do hear a lot of 1976 stories. And then even the Daily Telegraph, of all titles, who you would have thought would be taking the other side, there's an article in there in August that said, why your nostalgia for the summer of 96 is wrong. And the journalist there wrote, the further away the long, steamy summer of 1976 gets, the greater its mythical status becomes. Every time the thermometer pushes 30 degrees, hoary phrases like, but it isn't as hot as it was back then, or we survived 1976, it can't get worse, are wheeled out with remarkable regularity. So yeah, that's the starting point, really. So what's the truth here? Was 76 worse / better than 2025? Now, it's interesting once you dig into the details, because in terms of heat, 76 is no longer even in the top 5 summers. So it was for a long time, it was through to the 80s, but since essentially climate change has started kicking in, the hottest summers have all appeared since the year 2000. So the top 5 are all from 2000 onwards. So the pinnacle of 1976 heat was 35.9 degrees centigrade. As I said earlier, in 2022 we hit 40 degrees, so we're already 5 degrees beyond 76 temperatures, and that's been beaten 5 times since the year 2000. What 76 still has the record for, though, is the duration of a single heat wave. So there was 2 weeks where every day was above 32 degrees. That has yet to be beaten. Right. Interestingly. Yeah. 2025 didn't beat it. We had 9 days of above 32 degrees temperatures. So that's probably why it still stands out in the popular imagination. Yeah. There's lots of kind of talk of it seeming endless. And it probably would seem endless if you got 2 weeks above 32 degrees. But yet it's still... The suggestion that we all survived, it was, we coped, it is also incorrect. So on a serious point, there were heat deaths during 1976. Just finding the numbers here, I believe it was, so in 1976 there were 700 heat deaths reported. So even the suggestion that we survived actually isn't true. That's kind of an example of survivor bias, where only the survivors can recall the event and therefore say we survived. Yeah. But it wasn't as extreme a heat wave as we have now in terms of heat deaths, because we now have hotter night times. So often heat deaths are caused when the body doesn't have time to recover. In 1976, the night times were below what we are starting to experience now. So in 2022, the most extreme summer we've had, there were almost 3,000 excess deaths due to heat, partly because nighttime temperatures were going above 20 degrees at nighttime. No night times went above 20 degrees in 1976. So there was still this kind of recovery time for the body. Yeah. Plus, the peak temperature of 35.9 is hot. That can cause heat deaths for sure, but it's not as extreme as 40 degrees. So 76 still holds this kind of cultural imagination, but also there is an element of nostalgia because people are remembering being young. So this is 50 years ago now. So people that remember the summer of 1976 vividly would have been a young people during that time. So you have fond memories of childhood. Anyway, you're less likely to remember the hardships or be aware of the hardships even. Yeah. In terms of the drought and water supply element, so another very famous thing about 1976 is that there were extreme drought measures beyond hosepipe bans. So the most extreme, some regions, the water supply was fully cut off and people had to queue at standpipes, essentially hand pumps, to get their daily ration of water supply. That has not happened since, other than extreme pipe burst situations. So that is extreme, and it is a particular, thing to look back and say,
Yeah,
that
of
was very
course.
different. That was extreme.
And that would be quite memorable.
It would be.
Probably whatever age you were, if you sort of experienced that.
It would be extremely memorable, and it would also give you a sense that was different then.
Yes.
In terms of we had it really extreme. So again, this kind of flip flopping between 76 was great,
Yeah.
but also 76 was really tough, but
Yes.
we survived it.
Yes.
Both are kind of true. But yeah, this idea that that was the worst drought we've ever had because we had to queue at standpipes
Yeah.
does make sense and does hold true. But there was also other reasons why standpipes came in. So we had a different water system back then. We also, again, just researching this article, I didn't realise some of this until getting the chance to research it. But a lot of England's major reservoirs weren't yet built in 1976. And some of those regions that had standpipes, such as the Severn Trent region, now have some really major reservoirs that would avert that problem now. So
and were they built as a consequence of? Partly,
not
do you
quite.
know, or no?
Some were already in the planning, but a couple you could make more of a case for. Yeah, they were a consequence of.
Yeah.
So the ones that happened shortly after, such as Foremark, which is a Severn Trent reservoir, 1977, Farmore, Thames Water, 77. So they were already planning and being built in 76.
Yeah.
So there was an awareness that more reservoir storage was needed, and an unfortunate fact that this heat wave came before they were finished. Farmore is particularly interesting to me and us in this region because that's where our water supply to Banbury comes from, and we're recording this in Banbury, and I live in Banbury, so that's where our water comes from. That's South Oxfordshire, and it's interesting now we're in a hosepipe ban. So it's already showing how that infrastructure is starting to creak at the seams now.
Yes. Yeah.
So 50 years ago it solved a problem. 50 years on, which is typically the time frame that you talk about for reservoirs and major dams internationally, 50 years on, that's now not sufficient for our water supply. Then interestingly, the largest reservoir in the country, Kielder Water, was built in 1981. That's in Northumbria. And then Carsington, Severn Trent, 1991. That remains the newest major reservoir in this country. 1991 is now quite a long time ago,
Isn't it?
So I kind of think that whilst 1976 was a wake-up call for government then, and it actually did start to change the water system after that, 2025 needs to be a similar wake-up call now, because again, the difference between 25 and 76, although 76 had this 2-week-long 32-degree period, 2025 as the summer overall was hotter and drier by quite a long way, actually.
Yeah.
So the average temperature difference is almost a full degree above 1976.
Yeah.
So this is now becoming the new normal. This is what the Met Office are trying to warn us about, that this kind of persistent month-long warmth of 2025 was harder for water supply than 76 was, even though 76 had this standpipe issue that happened in that particular 2-week period. And also 76 was made worse by having a dry winter, so it was already running low on water. We actually had a wet winter in 24-25, so we were relatively okay. Now in terms of how the overall trends are looking, so the UK is warming by around 2.5 degrees Celsius per decade. So it's already at least 1.24 degrees warmer than the period between 61 and 90. Now, fascinatingly, Met Office projections say that a summer like 2025, without climate change, so without that increased temperature we've just talked about, would have happened once every 340 years. So the summer we're in now should be a once in 340 year anomaly.
Wow.
That's how extreme it is or should be. But now with that warming trend, with that 0.25 degrees per decade, we can now expect a summer like 2025 once every 5 years. So this is now the new normal.
Yeah.
Whether it's exactly the same, you're unlikely to get exactly the same sunshine from March onwards in the way we've had. But in terms of being warm, dry, and low precipitation.
Yes.
Still a word I struggle with, despite being a word I need to say every time I come on this podcast. That is the new normal.
Yes.
So, and we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And the dealing with it, there are so many measures, and we talk about the dealing with it in every podcast, because this is the subject of our conversation. But the dealing with it has many sides, some of which we can cover today. But sticking with new reservoirs, that's one of them.
Yes.
So I think we've now reached a point where we reached a point many years ago where we should have started new reservoirs, but now it really is very urgent.
Yes.
But there's many different ways and many different types of reservoir, which may be
Yeah, and it does seem, certainly based on this other podcast I listened to this morning, as referred to earlier, it seems it's happening, which is good. Good if done in the right way, I suppose. That's the key, and better if people understand the reasons why it's happening, which I think is a good thing of this culmination of water being discussed more and people being more aware of it, and I suppose a positive outcome of the sort of hosepipe bans or behavioural change that water companies in particular are starting to encourage, because another big difference that you do refer to in the article as well, of course, between 76 and 2025 is just the sheer number of people as well that. So the demand for water is so much greater, isn't it?
Yeah. Population growth is also a pressure on water supply. So England had a population of 46.6 million people in 1976. And apologies to people listening from the wider UK. I'm focusing on England because these are the figures, the latest figures that have come out. And also England's water shortage is the most acute of all the home nations. So that's the topic of conversation today. But there is definitely a conversation to be had on other days about the water supply in other home nations, because Scotland, incredibly, is having water supply issues now, which was not the case, say, 10 years ago even. Yeah. But just sticking with England, so England's population, 46.6 million in 76 compared to 57 million people now. So there are literally more people to supply. Yeah, I don't have the figures in this article, but water use has actually gone down slightly. I think water use per person peaked around the late 70s. Mm-hmm. We don't know exactly why. Partly just more efficient appliances coming online. Okay. But we use slightly less water now, but still more than we should do. Should maybe a loaded term, but more than our European neighbours do. Yeah. We have amongst the highest water use figures in Europe. Yeah. We're around 145, 150 litres per person, whereas in Europe it's more around 120 litres per person. But anyway, that's the water use side of things. Population growth has had an impact on water supply for sure, even if we didn't have climate change. But the two things combined make this particular issue particularly acute. So new reservoirs is a big part of that. You need to have water stored in order to be able to supply people. It all comes down. The whole conversation comes down to how much water you capture, how much rainfall you capture. Yeah. Whether that's in the underground aquifers, which we don't focus on nearly enough as a country. There's way more we could do with aquifer recharge. Aquifers are far bigger than any reservoir you could ever build. But then new reservoirs, are also part of the picture. In terms of really simple mathematics, any new reservoir is good. We store water in it and supply people. Yeah. But in terms of all the other aspects that we should be interested in terms of nature, I suppose, and biodiversity, there's good and bad ways of building a reservoir. So the biggest project on the horizon is Thames Water's long-running plan for a reservoir in Abingdon. We used to call it the Abingdon Reservoir. They now want to call it the SESRO, which is something like Strategic Reservoir Storage. I don't know, some acronym that no one knows what it means. But this is currently a 2.2 billion, 150 million cubic metre plan. It would be the second largest reservoir in the country, second largest only to Kielder Water, which is humongous. So big it wouldn't be, even if we started tomorrow, it wouldn't be complete until 2040. and also so big that it has to be built upwards. The site, I visited the site in Abingdon. The site is flat farmland. There's typically, if you build a reservoir, there's something to dam. There's some kind of valley existing already, and this is why we kind of picture some of the reservoirs when they go low. You've still got the old village church spire poking up. You often see this in drought stories in summer. That's because there's a valley there with a village by the river. You dam both ends. You fill it with water. That becomes a reservoir. There's nothing like that in Abingdon. It's a long flat site. So what they'd have to do is build huge banks all the way around it, line it all with clay. There is some natural clay there. That's the only thing going for the site. But it's so big. It covers such a large such a large space that it would flood flat farmland, but going upwards. So you'd have to also pump the water upwards from the River Thames. It's a mega, you could say, monstrous engineering project. It would take literally decades, but you could say by the end of it, and this has always been Thames Water's argument, by the end of it, you've almost solved the southeast water problems, because you've got this huge, almost Kielder size reservoir that never used to be there. The arguments against are so many and so massive to go into now, but the biggest one, I guess, is that it's too late. So a lot of the projections we have require water supply to be increased before 2040. I mean, we've just referred to 2025 summers happening with the regularity once every 5 years, so we might have 3 more of those to come, and those are just projections. They may well be happening more regularly than that. So it's too late. The problem needs to be solved before that. There's many other potential ways to store water than this, and a smaller reservoir would be a lot less disruptive and also very useful too. So there are other more interesting approaches that you mentioned the one you heard on the podcast this morning. That we could be looking towards. So rather than one huge mega centralized reservoir built upwards, we can have several more smaller ones that work with nature.
Almost more naturally.
More naturally. And that's not just a kind of a bleeding heart environmental, let's kind of create some habitat for some water birds. Although that's also good and useful. But it's also more to the point that where is that water going to come from in this climate change world where you have extreme drought for months? You have to hold on to small amounts of water when it falls, as well as then extreme weather and flood conditions when that arrives in winter. Pumping upwards from one river isn't really the way to do it. We need many more wetlands to hold on to water. Those wetlands can be built alongside smaller reservoirs. And this is happening. So the one you mentioned in Portsmouth, I believe, has that as part of the plan. There's one in the Fens in East Anglia being built by Anglian Water, that again is building new wetlands alongside it. Building new wetlands sounds strange and artificial, but can be done. I've been to London wetlands recently for another article, and that was an old Victorian reservoir. This is actually one that's been fully given over to nature. But it was an artificially constructed wetland, and is now an incredible site, an incredible way of holding on to water too. So wetlands also help to filter water, so they help on the nutrition overload side as well, and create habitat. So forgive me if I've quoted this before on the podcast, but there's a quote I use in the book from an Australian water expert. It says, building new reservoirs doesn't get you more money in the same way as opening more bank accounts. Building new reservoirs doesn't get you more water in the same way as opening more bank accounts doesn't get you more money. So it all it's storage. Same way as a bank account is storage. It's what you're paying in, how you pay in that matters really. And that comes down to how resilient our natural systems are, how healthy our rivers and aquifers are. That's how you hold on to that water and fill those reservoirs. So we do need reservoirs, but we need to be able to fill them. And that comes down to how healthy your natural system is around those reservoirs. So that's where the focus needs to be in these next 20 years, not, I would argue, just building one big,
enormous
monstrosity that may not even solve the problem, and may, if you look at some river flow projections, may not even be filled. There might not be enough water to fill it by that point.
Yes, and certainly, by the sounds of it, a bit too late. Perhaps.
It's the opposite of too little, too late. It's too much, too late.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, and especially with what does sound like is happening elsewhere, seems just to be likely to help sooner and in a more sort of efficient, sort of productive way that does also satisfy some other sort of important points like biodiversity and like ecosystems and all that sort of stuff. It is an interesting one that I guess is not the only interesting subject about Thames Water as well, is it? We've definitely referred to that and over previous episodes, and interesting that nothing sort of more significant has changed in that respect as I think we probably did think it might have by now. So that's
it's amazing that Thames Water are still going as a private company. I mean, I really did think they'd be put under special administration by this point. We'll see. I still think that's likely to happen. Probably the government don't want to do it, but we'll see.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of many things in this world of water and all things water related that is a regular feature in most newspapers, isn't it? And certainly isn't going away anytime soon.
Yeah, and also to allay suggestions that we're being too southeast focused. Thames Water is the biggest water company, so it is nationally very relevant and very what happens to Thames Water affects what happens to the whole water sector. So if they go into bankruptcy or special administration, that would be a big thing for all the other water companies. That's why it's such a one to watch.
Yes. So we have a wet winter to not just look forward to, but perhaps to hope for them, really, don't we?
It's a strange thing to want, isn't it? But yet we have to hold on to that when we're wading through floodwater.
Yeah, quite exactly. And I think that one thing that certainly we've talked to more new customers about this summer, people that have wanted to take more responsibility themselves and kind of be more proactive about it and are installing, their own underground rainwater harvesting tanks and that sort of thing. The good thing is for people that have decided to go down that path, they will directly benefit from a wet winter. And I know, I watched a video just yesterday of we haven't actually released it yet, but a new case study that we filmed, and this chap is talking about this, I think it's a 22,000 litre rainwater tank that he's put buried in his garden now, actually in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, I think, and is very much looking forward to that filling up with rainwater. And so there are things that people can do if they so wish, right?
Yeah, definitely. And these larger storage systems, I mean, are really coming into their own now. So I don't have anything like that. I've got two 100 litre water butts. They used to be fine.
Yes.
200 litres used to be fine. I've got a small garden. It's not a big size. But that would be enough to water whatever I wanted to water.
Yes.
Not this year.
Yeah.
So they've basically been dry for several months. They've just recently filled back up.
Yeah.
But I'm already eyeing up more rainwater storage myself. So and my water bill is way higher than it used to be. I think we covered that a couple of podcasts ago when I appeared. Water bills going up this year, but it's significantly higher. So I think people will be now looking at their water bills potentially for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't really need to look at it when it was 20 quid.
No, very much.
But now when it's into three figures, okay.
Yeah.
That's starting to be a significant part of household expenditure.
Yeah, and start to think and consider things that you can do to reduce it, and and using rainwater instead is absolutely a good option that perhaps in 4 months' time, once we've had a few months of rain, very different to the previous 4 to 6 months that we just had, people will be reminded of why it's a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. And you can view rainwater harvesting as, just a mini version of reservoirs. It's all about holding on to rainwater. That's where the whole subject comes back to, holding on to rainwater, how you capture it. But for personal use, household use, capturing that in a rainwater harvesting tank is massively useful. And it starts to have an impact on a very, if it starts to be on a much wider scale, it starts to have some impact on local flood.
Yes, of course.
Levels as well.
Yeah,
because you're helping that water from not going down the drain and flooding your local river.
Yeah. No, many win-win scenarios, I guess. And also, just thinking back to this chap that I was referring to a moment ago. If you're building anything new on your property as well, it's also a very, very sort of helpful aspect in terms of helping you to get planning permission and all that sort of stuff. Such is the importance of it when it's done on a bigger scale. So, no, very interesting. And I think, one thing I like about this podcast and the regularity of it and our future plans with the Water Matters platform is we have these to look back on. And so, it will be interesting in 3 to 4 months' time to be reminded of this episode and think, yes, we had 6 months of very dry weather and warm weather in 2025. How will it end? And because, as we said earlier, after a few days of rain, it does feel like, we're just back in, what we're used to and rainy Britain. But
yes.
It will be interesting as we approach the end of 2025 to see are we going to have the wet winter that we need.
And it's also important to remind ourselves and remind our future selves that it's the same issue. So when we get into extreme rainfall and flooding, it's the same issue as drought. These are the climate extremes we're yo-yoing between. How you hold on to that water and how you slow down that flood water is the issue that then we face now during a drought period. Did we hold on to it? Did we make use of that excess water when we had it? That's what it's all about.
Yes, and can we therefore look forward to maybe warmer summers in the future and make the most of both extremes, perhaps?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Tim. I hope listeners enjoyed that episode. Perhaps you've got your own memories of 76 or not, but either way, hopefully good memories of the summer of 2025, and some that you can remember on a rainy day in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks' time. So thank you for listening to the Water Matters podcast. Please do visit watermatters.life to make sure that you are subscribed to getting our emails and keeping in touch with us. If you've got any of your own stories that of rainwater recycling that you would like to share with us, or any sort of water saving stories at all, we're always keen to hear from other people and share those on the Water Matters platform as well. And so we'll be back soon with the next episode, and we look forward to joining you then. So thanks very much, Tim. We'll be back with a future episode very, very soon.